problématiques soient adressées, c'est de s'assurer que de manière collégiale, de manière collective, toutes les voix puissent être entendues. Et aux Nations Unies, nous disons « Leave no one behind », ne laissez personne de côté. Et j'ai eu l'opportunité de participer à la réunion d'hier, et la salle était remplie d'énergie, puisque l'objectif de la réunion, c'était de faire une première réunion de toutes les parties prenantes, et notamment les parties qu'on n'écoute pas toujours. Et je voudrais prendre ce moment pour vous dire quelque chose qui m'a marqué et que je pense porte le message sur lequel je voudrais mettre l'accent. C'est l'un des panélistes qui a mis l'accent sur le fait qu'il fallait que les communautés, les jeunes, les femmes, et de manière très éloquente, puissent être écoutées. Pas uniquement écoutées, mais puissent avoir leur place autour de la table lorsqu'on discute de ces questions de l'eau, parce qu'elles sont les plus affectées. Et j'ai écouté les groupes de jeunes, les représentants des jeunes, qui ont renforcé ce message et indiqué qu'ils voudraient participer à toutes les étapes, pas uniquement comme bénéficiaires, pas uniquement juste écouter, mais à travers de la co-création avec des actions concrètes. Alors, mon message aujourd'hui, c'est entre Dakar et Abu Dhabi au mois de décembre, nous avons l'opportunité d'écouter, d'apprendre des communautés qui sont j'ai envie de dire, les garants de l'eau pour nous, qui protègent cette ressource vitale, les écouter les solutions qu'ils ont à nous apporter. Et le multilatéralisme pour nous, de notre point de vue, est vraiment la plateforme où tout le monde peut avoir l'opportunité de faire entendre sa voix sur cette question de l'eau. Les gouvernements locaux, les groupes de jeunes, les femmes, les peuples autochtones. Et je me souviens de quelqu'un qui était dans la salle qui a parlé des personnes vivant avec un handicap et qui nous a rappelé qu'on les oublie souvent dans les plans que nous faisons. Donc faisons en sorte, entre maintenant et Abu Dhabi, d'écouter leurs solutions, de les analyser. Et nous, du côté du Sénégal, nous avons quelques expériences à partager avec vous comme équipe pays des Nations Unies. Et nous nous engageons ici à prendre en compte tout ce qui va sortir des conclusions de Dakar et de travailler main dans la main avec vous, avec la partie sénégalaise, afin que le mois de décembre 2026 à Abu Dhabi soit un succès. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde. Merci de cette opportunité de vous accueillir. Et Gordon, je vous repasse la parole.
Merci. J'ai remarqué qu'on parle beaucoup d'anglais, mais on va peut-être continuer en anglais. Mais I just wanted to say, I mean, you mentioned the importance of, women, youth, indigenous people, but just also the role of communication and engagement, even within the UN system, is tremendously important, and just recognizing your role at making sure that we have impact at country level. So we're going to start with the panel now, and just to tell you a little bit about how it will work. We've decided beforehand we're going to do a rapid fire kind of 1 minute kind of intervention, and we're going to interrupt each other, hopefully. We're going to try to make it a little bit lively and exciting. We'll see if we're successful. So with that, I think I'll introduce people one by one, but we'll keep it short, and then we'll come back. And then what we plan to do is we'll come back to the Slido, and then we'll hand the microphone over to you in the audience. So be ready with your questions, because we're ready for anything here. So yeah, it's a real pleasure. Muyatwa Sitali, acting CEO, of Sanitation and Water for All. I know you've thought a little bit about this, or quite a bit about this, in the course of your everyday life at Sanitation and Water for All, and also specifically for this conference. So can you give us some of your thoughts in terms of maybe a little bit about how we can strengthen some of this stakeholder engagement in the course of your discussions?
Yes. Thank you so much, Bruce. Good evening, everyone. I come from Zambia. It's a great footballing nation, and so I can't let the opportunity pass to congratulate Senegal for winning the Africa Cup. From the AFCON champions of 2012 to Senegal, congratulations. Bruce, that was a fantastic question. Sanitation and Water for All, you may know, is a multi-stakeholder partnership. So it's in the DNA of SWA to work with multi-stakeholders. We include government, private sector, civil society, research institutions, development agencies, philanthropies, etc., etc. Now, Minister Balala said something in the morning, and he said the conference will not be shaped by a few, it will be built by all. And I think this was a profound statement because it speaks to the process of preparing for the UN Water Conference. And I think it's crucial that this preparation is inclusive of different types of stakeholders, but also that we are reaching out, because to achieve SDG 6, we will require other SDGs. So how many of us actually do engage purposefully with other sectors that are crucial to what we do? Not just inviting them to a meeting once, not just sharing a document with them once, but understanding what they do and bringing also what they do into what we are doing. That might be nutrition and several energy, etc., etc. So that's one point in terms of reaching out to other sectors. The second point I wanted to highlight is inclusion in terms of who is at the table. It could be the different types of stakeholders, but also the intergenerational conversation that we're having. And in the run-up to UN Water Conference, I think it'll be important for preparatory processes at country level to be that inclusive, to also reach out to the other sectors. Bruce, let me end with one point, just in the interest of time, which is that to do this engagement, multi-stakeholder engagement, multi-sectoral engagement, requires time, it requires money, it requires effort. So it's something that we need to think about and also be strategic about it in terms of making sure we have the right voices at the table and that we're achieving the results efficiently. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Chitali. And he's not off the hook. I mean, maybe in another round, but I mean, it's very important, this notion of reaching out to other sectors. We've heard that a lot, but there's a question of how, and you kind of mentioned it, you alluded to that. There's actually some complexity to this. So I'm going to come back to that, but it's also a pleasure now to introduce Ms. Amira Sedenaleva, who is the Central Asia Youth for Water. That's who she's representing from Kyrgyzstan. So the floor is yours. The same sort of question. Some of your thoughts on some of the opportunities or concrete suggestions about how we can do things better.
Thank you so much. So I think that when we speak about international generation engagement, it is no more about if young people have enough experience or not. This debate is solved. We are all learning from each other. The real question is how we cooperate and how we collaborate across generations to deliver impact. What mechanisms should be there? For the preparatory process and the 2026 UN Water Conference itself, the aspiration of the global youth movement for water is to move from fragmented, parallel action to sustainable intergenerational partnerships, where governments, international organizations, and youth work together from design to implementation. The key strategic opportunity lies in the roadmap from Senegal to United Arab Emirates, which has been mentioned all this time. We have a solution. The Global Youth Movement for Water is implementing the Water Youth Strategy, a long-term intergenerational framework built on years of experience and collective action. We would be pleased to work with the co-host in the development on it. It is worth recalling that the Global Youth Movement for Water is the legacy of the 9th World Water Forum here in Dakar, proof that intergenerational partnerships endure when they are trusted. So what concrete actions are needed? First, bring the 2023 commitments to life, not as promises, but as practice. Second, officially endorse and align the Water Youth Strategy with the Conference Youth Strategy, strengthening sustainable partnerships across generations and institutions. And third, continue and accelerate engaging with us as partners, involving us to help bridge governance, international organizations, civil society, youth, women, and indigenous communities. The last two words of the questions on the screen behind you were are actions by whom? Let me point out your names. Member states, please pick your national youth delegation for example. Co-host, work with us to align the long-term water use strategy that you can also see behind you on the screen. Private and public sectors, which are also one of the most important stakeholders here, come and talk to us to find synergies in our activities. International organizations, but also everyone who is here right now, involve youth at the extent of 30-30-30. Let's move to the next stage of our intergenerational cooperation and unite our efforts. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Amira. And I can actually see, like, after you said all that, we seem to have the water use strategy as the top Slido words. And I hope, it's, I think, incumbent on all of us to become familiar with that strategy. So thanks for raising that to our attention. Now, I'm going to turn to my left to my colleague Neil Dott, who is the director of Aquafed. Neil, you're traditionally asked about engaging in the private sector, and I think you traditionally push back a little and think, there's a bit of complexity to that as well. But I know you've been thinking about this, and I'm wondering if you can give us your insights on this kind of big question.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who stayed at this late hour to come and listen to us. Really appreciate it. Okay, so I'm Neil Dott. I'm the director of Aquafed, which is the Federation of Private Operators. The reason I'm telling you that is because I've realised that after 8 years in doing this, that still there's a fundamental lack of understanding of the different aspects of the private sector. We're very, very broad. I mean, it all gets mixed up all the time. And so one of my hopes for this conference is to have, well, it's not a hope, it's a sad resignation that we're going to have to go back to basics and really help you understand, and the UN system particularly understand the differences. Because, what I do, what my members do is very different from, say, a corporate user of water to a financer of water. It's someone who has, private capital, and they're all mixed up and muddled. And we need to make that massively important distinction. But on a more positive note, if I think of this conference, I actually think about what I would like to see happen on the ground, and I'll reverse engineer backwards. What I want on the ground, what I think we need as business overall, all businesses need, is governments to be capable to put systems in place so they can manage us effectively and govern us, right? And have expertise in ministries to be able to get the best out of the private sector. So that's the old capacity building thing that we hear about. That's what it means for us in practice, and that's still a massive, massive fundamental basic that we need to get right in this sector. Because in other sectors, it's there. In energy, transport, telecoms, other infrastructure sectors, there is very good understanding in ministries of how to handle the broad church of the private sector, whereas in water there isn't. So to get to that place, what I'm hoping is that the UN itself will see itself much more as a facilitator between business and government, because the UN is the safe space and the trusted space and the transparent space to have that discussion between business and governments themselves. And to get to that stage, first what I'd like to see happen, hopefully by December, is a clear interface now between all parts of the private sector and UN Water, because that still does not exist either. So I know that sounds kind of boring and processy, but it's the sad reality of where we are at the moment. Just to conclude, I know a lot of people, they like to talk about things like blended finance, blue bonds, green bonds, orange bonds, complex models. Forget it. If we don't get the basics right in this sector, you can talk about money till the cows come home, it's never going to come. Okay, so that's what I hope to get out of this conference. So I will, at the next stage, I want to talk about water youth strategy, but I'm now going to give the microphone back. Thank you.
Neil, I can't resist. I'm going to ask a follow-up question. It's going to be terrible, but okay. Look, you talked about facilitating this business and government interaction, and let's just say the ideal is a 10 out of 10. Where do you think we are now?
Well, we are about 5 out of 10, because you have discussion. I wasn't here yesterday, but I heard the stakeholder conversation yesterday was pretty lively, and the usual suspects who don't like us too much were given their voice. So the system works, okay, and that's great, no problem with that, right? And there's the place where the noise happens. Then there's also what's missing, the extra 5 out of 10, is the place where I'll retract that, where calm discussion, serious adult discussion happens between business and the UN system and government, but transparently, okay? So it doesn't mean having to bring everyone, so everyone gets to shout what they like, yeah? And mix up terms like financialization, privatization, and get all this soup mixed up. You're getting my point, right? And you can see why I get quite angry about it. But actually, for that extra 5 out of 10, Structured, facilitated discussion between all parts of business and governments from the UN. If you do that, we're going to be in a much better place.
Excellent. Okay, I mean, we're getting some applause there, and it's true. I mean, there has to be, as I think you were saying also, Sitale, some intention here, right, in terms of getting the structure right. And then I think with that, I'd like to go to my colleague, Mr. Ziad Kayat. He's the Senior Sustainable Development Officer on Water in the UN Economic and Social Commission for the Western Asia region. So you have a regional perspective. You understand how some of these structures should be working or could be working. What do you want to bring to the discussion today about trying to kind of, I guess, optimize or really seize those opportunities within the context that you know?
Thanks for that, and thanks to the co-host for the opportunity again to bring the regional voices. As a regional commission and part of the co-chair for the regional expert group under UN Water with ESCAP and the 5 regional commissions, I think the opportunity at the regional level to bridge between the global discussion and the discussion that needs to happen at the regional to the country level is an important step that we are heavily invested in and heavily believe in. We've tried that in the 2023 conference, and we believe that was a successful track. We've also reinvested in it with minimal resources this time around, in the belief that this process, regional process, allows the voices and the specificities and the challenges at the regional level to find their way to in a structured manner to the UN Water Conference. And it helps to be a platform to listen, to learn, to mobilize resources, and what we're all looking for this time around to implement. And we strongly believe that this regional platform allows the different challenges, the different strengths around the regions, that exchange to foster collaboration across borders. As we've heard in the different sessions, water doesn't stop at that boundary. The importance of transboundary collaboration, the source to sea, and all of that, we've heard that, and that's really clear, and you can bring that at the regional level. And what I'm also interested in hearing is not just regional level when we're talking about country engagement, but also different stakeholder engagement at the regional level. And I'd like to also hear back from the panel and have that discussion of how do we bring in the private sector voice at the regional level, and across regions, how do we bring the youth voice at the regional level, across regions, how do we learn from each other from there. And what we've done in the past at the regional level is we were to a certain level successful to bring in the different sectors, specifically the agriculture, water interaction there, and to some extent energy, but also that would be also interesting to hear from the panel and also hopefully from the audience on that. So I'll give you back the mic.
Okay, thanks, Ziad. And I think, Amira, that question about how to engage youth at the regional level, I think was made for you. But what I'd like to do is go to you, Amanita. And really, est-ce que vous avez les réflexions ou commentaires après tous ces mots élégants de nos collègues?
Merci, oui, effectivement, en tant que coordonnatrice résidente du système des Nations Unies, l'un des défis que nous avons souvent, c'est de s'assurer que l'ensemble des entités qui appuient ce genre de processus au niveau du pays puissent travailler de manière coordonnée. Et j'ai bien écouté ce que le panéliste a mentionné sur le rôle important de l'UN et le collègue au niveau régional. Et en fait, c'est toute cette articulation entre le niveau du pays, toutes les agences, et je regarde juste le Sénégal, l'appui que nous apportons ici au Sénégal. Nous avons plusieurs entités qui travaillent sur la question de l'eau sous différentes dimensions. Donc c'est important que déjà pour l'UN, pour faciliter ce dialogue avec le secteur privé, avec les organisations de la société civile, avec les jeunes, que nous puissions déjà au niveau de l'équipe pays nous coordonner, et nous sommes prêts à le faire. Nous sommes engagés dans ce processus. Et ensuite, ce processus peut être escalé au niveau régional pour avoir cet échange entre tous les pays. l'Afrique a décrété que 2026 serait l'année de l'eau. Et le défi qui se pose à nous, c'est comment justement amener toute cette vision de l'Afrique, toutes les différentes perspectives des pays sur la question de l'eau à un niveau beaucoup plus élevé afin qu'on puisse présenter une voie collective pour l'Afrique sur les solutions potentielles. Vous savez qu'en matière d'eau, et vous êtes les experts sur ces questions, il y a plusieurs dimensions en Afrique. Nous avons la question des conflits entre plusieurs pays, nous avons la question de l'exploitation de l'eau, nous avons la question de l'accès des jeunes, des femmes dans les écoles. Donc, toute cette, mettre ensemble cette vision pour pouvoir le porter dans un message qui est cohérent et voir autour de la table comment le secteur privé peut accompagner le processus de manière transparente. Je crois qu'il y a eu beaucoup de demandes sur la transparence dans les échanges. Je pense que c'est quelque chose que UN peut faire et nous, au niveau des pays, comme coordonnateurs résidents, nous pouvons faciliter ce processus au niveau des pays et ensuite passer la balle pour vous au niveau régional. Merci.
There's certainly a real power when you have, I would say, aligned and coherent voices going to government, from youth, from business, from UN system or regional instruments. I think what I'd like to, I have some follow-up questions for everyone, but we kind of had a little discussion before and we thought, you know what, we are going to throw it over to you. I really appreciate, I can barely see some of your words. I think we've touched on many of them in the Slido, but is there an appetite from the audience to either ask questions or to add their reflections? It's difficult a little bit to see, but I mean, if someone is dying for a question, just please raise your hand. And what I'll do now is, if people are not raising their hand, feel free to do so. But maybe going to Amira first, and maybe then Sitali. So about this question, Amira, either about, I don't know if you felt like you wanted to react to the, how do I say, the question from Ziad, or if you wanted to kind of expand on some of these issues around sort of concrete suggestions to actually make this happen.
Yeah, I think that I'm really grateful for bringing you to this conversation. So I really like the word, mechanism. It sounds so professional, so something that belongs to only specialists. So maybe let's talk about mechanisms in working with youth. We know that young people are so different, especially in the century where we have the information from all over the world. And you know that now in our century, it is also one of the biggest generation in the world. I mean, there are billions of young people. And so the question is how to work with such a global numbers, especially for the international institutions and government agencies. I think the answer, the mechanisms is relies on to work with those who can reach out to such great numbers. So who are they? I think that if your project activities are targeting young people, then youth organizations, youth networks, and youth-led initiatives are not just beneficiaries. This word I don't like, but they're natural partners. In many cases, youth networks, we are all more closer to youth than any international organization or any government agency. So let me give you one concrete example. For the UN-led survey, it took the entire summer to collect 200 responses in Kyrgyzstan. But for my grassroots organization, it took only 1 day to gather 100 responses through a single communication channel. This is why it is essential not only to invite youth to forums, but include youth organizations beyond dialects. We are talking here about sustainability, when we are just not participating in the conference, when we are not only networking with each other, but about how our actions can be united, how these mechanisms can be provided. So I think that it should be in our work plans, implementation calendars, and decision-making structures. This is how we solve the problem of fragmented actions among stakeholders. This fragmentation, it was also mentioned so many times in the water use strategy that you all can see behind you on the screen. So we're fully ready for the stage of intervention and intergenerational cooperation. So some the last concrete recommendations. So what can we do? For the UN Water Conference 2026, we can make something completely unusual and innovative. Have a special session on the first day dedicated to the youth contribution, right after the opening ceremony. Global Youth Movement for Water would like to host this session. I know for sure that youth have stories that must be shared on the global stage. So thank you.
So we're gonna seize that opening limelight where everyone's nervous and all the high-level people are there and the youth are going to shine, and I love that idea. Okay, so Tali, I said I'd get back to you. Now, you talked a little bit about, touching on other sectors. I don't know if you have mechanisms or thoughts on the whole intergenerational kind of communication or engagement, but over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Bruce, I'll touch on that, but something you said after I spoke earlier was about complexity. So I wanted to touch on that because this engagement, whether you are engaging with other sectors or you are engaging within the sector but with other stakeholders, the goal is not just to engage. So making engagement the goal can be a problem because just bringing people together, they have coffee and tea and biscuits and they leave, is not enough. That's not what we need to make progress. What we need is there to be a purpose for why we're bringing all these stakeholders together. Do we want to develop a policy? Do we want to get a better financing arrangement? Do we want to get better ways of reaching the last mile? And if governments lead that process in really coalescing everyone around this goal, then you know who you need at the table and why you need them there, and then it becomes easier to answer Neil's question about governments sort of manage us better, give us a sense of why you want us at the table. So making engagement the purpose can be a mistake, and I think that contributes to the complexity. There are different ways of how this can be done. I think in this era of AI, in this era of you may not always need people to come to a specific room. You could engage with them in different ways, but it needs to be very purposeful. And I think that in the run-up to the UN Water Conference, leaders, governments need to make that purpose of how they're going to bring people and for what purpose. Thank you.
I keep cutting all this audience applause off your lovely interventions. I'm sorry, but I'm very kind of you. So I think, Satali, you're saying like this notion of kind of, engaging or having engagement for the sake of engagement versus, solving a problem is something that is I think I face that inside my own organization when people start talking about, you need to work across the silos, and but then when you're working on a project or trying to focus on a solution and really developing those relationships because you have to, that's when I think things shine. I think that's what they're trying to say. I don't know. Neil, over to you.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts on what's building on what Satali was saying, and I'm probably going to want to say something that you're probably going to tell me is impossible, but certainly from the private sector point of view, and I mean all of us now, not just my part, what we would actually like pretty quickly is a stronger sense of priorities from the 12 countries that are leading the interactive dialogues to each 2 times 6, isn't it? Yeah, so my maths is not working. Okay, so those countries plus UAE and Senegal. I wonder, is just a little test, and forgive me for my mischief, but is anyone from the UAE or Senegal government even here? 1. Excellent. There we go. Right. So you are now responsible for 1.5. Okay. So So I just think part of the reason for having these conferences is to actually listen to the people when they're speaking. But anyway, never mind. So I've lost my point now because I was being a bit bitchy, but I didn't mean to. Okay. So I did. Back to my point, priorities. Because if you look at the background documents for all the interactive dialogues that have been floating around on the website, they are basically, it's all motherhood and apple pie, everything to everyone, get a big bucket, or the skip, we call it in the UK, throw everything in it, and that has to stop now. Otherwise, we're going to be back in 2023, and we're going to be, as Satali sort of was saying, we're going to be engaging without any purpose whatsoever. So whoever the leaders are, please, can you listen, set priorities, even if everyone doesn't like it, even if none of those priorities involve directly public-private partnerships, I couldn't care less, okay? Somehow I will work our way into supporting what those priorities are. Set some priorities pretty damn quickly, and let's get on with this. Otherwise, we'll be back to 23 when we'll just have a lovely chat for a week and nothing happens.
Right. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to, I think, Thilo, you're breaking the ice, aren't you? I saw that hand. I'm going to try to go down here without tripping. You're going to ask your question or give us your comment.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to pose a question. Thilo Panzerbieter from the German WASH Network chair. Together with Neil was just challenging, and I want to just answer with that we found that both Senegal and UAE were very open and supportive, together with UNDESA, to put on that stakeholder day that you mentioned the other day. And since ONU and German WASH Network were allowed to help with the sort of bringing stakeholders together, I just want to say again how difficult that is. Reaching out to those networks that you should be including that you're maybe not even aware of, and when they get back to you and you're trying to coordinate them, being fair and researching who to then involve. And I think we had a very good involvement of youth and different groups the other day. And maybe I just wanted to pose a question to the panelists. That on the one hand now, from the stakeholder day, there have been short think pieces for each of the dialogues that have been worked on. We have groups of stakeholders who came forward to work throughout this year, not just in these past days. Some of them online, some of them here locally, and so we have on the one hand the informal working groups, we have the co-chairs. We now have these working groups of these stakeholder involvement day, and I think each of those groups obviously need that platform to discuss amongst themselves, but also throughout this year to look for places for that to converge. And I think working through networks is the way to go, because that's the way you can increase that reach and bundle those inputs. And interested to hear what you think about that plan to converge those different streams.
Okay, great, Thilo. And I think what we'll do, I see you got Neil. We'll have one. Oh my goodness, I've opened up. Could we do three quickly? You guys, could we take it? Okay, then we'll stop at you three, and then because we have to wrap up. Vous parlez en français?
Français. Je me nomme Abdou Samad Diouf. Je suis sénégalais. Je suis le coordinateur national de la plateforme des acteurs communautaires de lutte contre les inondations. Et j'ai beaucoup aimé vraiment l'intervention de la directrice, parce qu'elle a parlé des personnes handicapées. Moi, je suis handicapé physique, mais je suis devenu le coordinateur national des acteurs communautaires depuis presque une dizaine d'années pour s'activer pour la lutte contre les inondations. Parce qu'on ne peut pas faire quelque chose dans la société sans les handicapés. Parce qu'ils ont un rôle à jouer sur tous les domaines. On parle aujourd'hui de l'eau, c'est très important. Parce que moi, je suis natif de Kaolack. Au niveau de Kaolack, tout le monde comprend la situation de l'eau de Kaolack. Mais aujourd'hui, on a eu la chance d'avoir un ministre qui est toujours au chevet de la population, très engagé, qui est en train de faire des efforts pour faire sortir les populations et essayer de soulager les populations. Actuellement, on ne peut pas faire quelque chose sans l'implication des acteurs communautaires, sinon il n'y aura pas les résultats escomptés. Il faut qu'on implique davantage les acteurs communautaires. Il faut sur tous les domaines, parce que les acteurs communautaires, à chaque fois, ils sont aux côtés des populations. C'est pour cela que j'interviens et je prends la parole pour remercier donc Madame la directrice, donc donner encore une fois les handicapés leur place sur la société. Ce n'est pas parce que tu es un handicapé, tu dois tendre la main, mais il faut que tu te bats pour être devant comme tout le monde. C'est pour cela aujourd'hui nous sommes là. Remercier aussi encore une fois le ministre qui nous a toujours impliqués sur tous les plans pour mettre les acteurs communautaires devant parce qu'il faut une démarche inclusive pour qu'on puisse réussir tous les projets qu'on a dans l'avenir. C'est juste une contribution. Remercier l'État du Sénégal qui est en train de faire des efforts partout au niveau du pays. Merci beaucoup.
Super simple. Salvador Rico, a member of the Rotary International. I want to do the question of intergenerational cooperation, essential, how to ensure that all the stakeholders, and I'm talking about all 8 billion people in the planet, which are stakeholders, can understand the water cycle and the importance of protecting and restoring water bodies. Water is a shared resource, and safeguarding it requires multi-sectorial approach. And this is a question for the youth, especially in intergenerational cooperation. So how do we do this? Because we need to make sure that we take care of this through governments, communities, businesses, scientists, and civil society. All we have a role to play. Ultimately, again, all 8 billion people are stakeholders. How do we do that?
Okay, thanks for keeping it brief. We have one comment there, and then we'll end with you.
Thank you so much. I would like to take the floor on behalf of one of the co-chairs, as they have been explicitly mentioned. And I mean, the stakeholder dialogue yesterday has been mentioned also by the panelists, so I guess it has been a huge success. And I would like to also pick up on what Thilo said before. Germany is co-chairing ID5 tomorrow morning, and I hope all of you will be here in this room to engage actively. And we are trying to have several occasions throughout the year, in person and hybrid, for further stakeholder participation. And we encourage, like everyone, like every co-chair, and also, of course, the co-hosts, to go this road together with us and invite as many as people as possible to be involved in the conference. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for giving that, actually for volunteering to do that. That's very good. And then we'll have our final comment up there. Yes, please.
All right, I'm Matt Terry from the Ecuadorian Rivers Institute. As a follow-up to the previous comment, I noticed that cross-sectoral initiatives were one of the main Slido comment keywords. And just a reflection, the SDG 6.6, protection and restoration of freshwater resources, somehow did not make it explicitly in any part of the agenda or the interactive dialogue themes. And despite that, the protection of freshwater resources is critical for water for the people, water for prosperity, and water for the planet. We're just not seeing any mention of that explicitly there in the interactive dialogue themes. So my question to you is, how can we make the protection and restoration of freshwater resources a cross-sectoral component of each and every thematic dialogue?
Okay.
From youth, from private industry, and from the UN system public member states. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's very clear, and I think we have a number of questions to potentially choose from. So I'll summarize quickly so we're all on the same page, and then we'll maybe start with Ziad. He can smile and take them. But I think, Thilo, you raised a great point about us, being aware that there was already a stakeholder day and the efforts of Senegal and UAE in trying to support that, and the think pieces that are coming out of that. So certainly, we need to kind of link in with those. The question of the handicapped, disability, and really having the community kind of at the center of things. I mean, that's absolutely essential. The issue of intergenerational equity, and it links to the final comment on the issue of protection of freshwater resources. This is for everyone, and trying to keep things into the kind of sustainable, so future generations are not harmed, and how to make it cross-cutting. And then Germany, of course, is going to give us an opportunity to further discuss. So, I mean, based on any of those themes, I'm going to just pass the microphone and you can either choose or add your comment. So I know that's a hard...
Yeah, I'll try to that. First, shout out to Germany and thanks. I mean, in the 2023, Germany made a generous contribution to the regional commissions to support that dialogue, and thanks again for making that effort to support the stakeholder engagement in the process, which is very beneficial. Let me maybe just put something that probably tries to answer all of these in one. We need to, again, and I really like the roadmap that was used in the previous 2023 UN Water Conference that was sort of drawn by hand. And I think we all remember that roadmap that showed the road leading to the 2023 UN Conference. We need to remember that this is a process. It's not a one event or a one shot, that this is a process that we hopefully all take this process together. We're on a, let's say, a big bus, and we're making these pit stops at different events, and each time you make a pit stop, you hope to make gains on your trip, on your way, and these are stops that are building towards a result that we hope to achieve. And there are a lot of processes. There's stakeholder consultations, there are regional processes, there are national processes. What's important is to sort of to find a way to link all of these processes and that are capturing different stakeholder voices. Neil said that we need to make priorities and said we would love to have the voices of the 8 billion come to UAE, and I'm sure the UAE coast would love to have 8 billion people show up and have their voices. It won't happen. But there are a lot of stops on the road to UAE. Today was one of them. Yesterday was one of them for the stakeholders. What the challenge is for the co-hosts and for all of us is a way to link what's happening on the road and make these voices heard, being heard at that moment of time. But it doesn't end there. We all have, when that conference finishes, we need to remember and take it, and I think we've sort of not done that truly, to keep on, that this is a journey that we're all involved on. Take what's coming out of that and implement, and implement, and implement. And all of us, the 8 billion, implement that. It's easier said than done. It's a lot, but this is the way I see this journey that we're all on. And I'll end there.
Yeah, so according to the question about the youth participation, how to engage so many stakeholders, I think that it is really important to highlight that, for example, the global community has made a great progress. For example, of course, I wasn't here 20 years ago, you were, but I know that the youth agenda has been only started to be considered. And now we have so many young and prominent people at the table at these conferences. But yes, of course, we still have a lot of work to do. We will always have. For example, how to make our work more sustainable, how to connect our work, our efforts into one channel of work. So I think that the institutionalization is a very important aspect here, because we are talking about the gradual approach, about the gradual process. For example, in Central Asia, 5 years ago, when I only started, being involved in the peace building issues, there weren't any institutionalization for the youth participation. We could participate in some conferences, or even like as volunteers, or maybe some invitations from the universities to participate there as students. But now we have different platforms to raise our voice. For example, Central Asian Youth for Water, it is like a network. The European Union Science and Boards, International Organization for Migration, it is also like the Youth Council for the Youth of Central Asia. So now we have institutionalized platforms to be engaged, to talk about the needs of the young people from the villages, from the big cities, about the connected efforts. We can talk to different stakeholders, international organizations, government agencies, and independent experts, and especially to academia. So I think there's also different approaches on grassroots levels and on conferences levels, for example, the global international levels. Whenever we talk about the grassroots levels, I imagine a small village, maybe in the Fergana Valley. It is the center of Central Asia, in the middle of the Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. It has transboundary water-related issues, and it is really related to the peace building. Sometimes to clashes. It's a very relevant and sensitive topic. So, considering the sensitivity of this political will the people in the power, for example, invite young people to discuss these issues? I think that there is, in this case, should be some opportunities for young people, for young representative activists to participate in the informal dialogues with people who have some positions in these discussions on the grassroots levels. And we also have conferences. For example, will the national delegations include youth? From my personal experience, I've been participating, traveling all over the world to the global forums for more than 5 years. And in these 5 years, I met delegations from the Central Asia only once, but not because there were some channels to connect in different stakeholders, but because I saw the same jewelries that I wear today. Yeah. So, and you know that from observing problems and challenges, I mean, all these days, I've been here for the week, and I know for sure that you participating also too so much time at these global forums, and most of the time we discussing some problems, some challenges. I mean, we are all aware of it, and now we need to go to solutions. I think in this case, I'm sorry for taking a lot of time, but I think in this case we need to create channels for communication between different stakeholders. We need to create working groups. Okay, we have problems, we have challenges. Now we want solutions. We don't want empty discussions. We want to act, and we can act. Yeah. So thank you.
I'll just touch on a few aspects as we are wrapping up. So I spoke earlier about not making engagement the goal, but having a superior goal that then this multi-stakeholder engagement aims to achieve. Underlying that, there should be some accountability related to it, not just for the government, but also from the other partners. And that accountability could be in the sense of not just participation, but what is required in that participation. I have participated in some country processes where there is government leadership, but partners are not following. They're not providing the data that government is asking. They're continuing to duplicate projects, continuing to ignore things that are already being put forward by government. So where there is leadership, I think it is just prudent to follow. But it is also important that in this multi-stakeholder process, multi-sectoral process, we also have an underlying principle about what those accountabilities are going to look like in terms of who we are engaging. That could be perhaps engaging with colleagues in the handicapped community, could be engaging parliamentarians as well, so that they could be the voice of their communities. So I just wanted to really highlight this specific aspect about accountability as a crucial part of the process. Thank you.
I'll be really quick. Luckily, the point that Amira made just now has given me the kind of a diplomatic basis to say what I was going to say, because I was actually going to be borderline offensive, and I'm not trying to be. This sector is already extremely inclusive. Okay, we are the most inclusive place I've ever seen. And Thilo, you mentioned quite rightly, and this is not in dispute. You talked about all the opportunities that have been created for stakeholder discussion. Yes. Brilliant, yes, we are the best at it in the world, I think, this sector. But that's not the point, right? It's like, it goes back to what Amir is saying. It's not just about discussion, it's about then actual solutions. And you don't get that unless you prioritize. Otherwise, we can just talk forever. And actually, if we continue to include all the time and discuss without actually prioritizing and taking decisions, you are actually giving people the illusion of influence, particularly the young. And I think actually we're in danger of just lying to them. And I'm sorry to be so strong about this, but I've been working with young people in this sector for years now. And I see it all the time. And it's just tokenism. It's like, let's involve the youth, give them a stage. But then what do you do with it afterwards? Absolutely nothing. And I'm sorry, but it just really makes me quite angry when I see on LinkedIn all the time, get these pictures of shiny, happy young people because they've been invited to a conference. But like, what happens next? Nothing. So we either carry on giving them the illusion of influence, giving them the illusion that they're actually, being listened to, and they're not. They're being included, but that doesn't mean they're actually acting on it. So I'm sorry to challenge people very strongly on this, but I'm getting far too old to listen and to see this thing again and again and again, and it has to stop. Thank you.
Merci. Alors, c'est très intéressant quand j'écoute tout ce qui a été dit. En fait, on est comme devant un défi. Augmenter l'inclusion, entendre le maximum de personnes, mais en même temps prioriser. Et je crois que c'est un défi qu'on va avoir tout au long du processus jusqu'à la conférence elle-même. Cependant, il y a des façons de pouvoir consulter à l'échelle. Il y a énormément de réseaux qui existent déjà. Hier, à la journée d'hier, ça a été l'occasion pour moi de voir qu'il y a énormément de parties prenantes qui sont engagées déjà dans le processus. Et effectivement, oui, on a des études, on a des analyses. Peut-être que les données ne sont pas tout à fait complètes et on peut continuer à le faire. Mais il y a quelque chose qui existe, qui est assez solide déjà. Maintenant, ce que j'entends en écoutant l'Assemblée, c'est qu'il faut aller un peu plus loin. Et il y a d'autres personnes qui veulent encore se faire entendre. Je pense qu'il faut donner la place à ces personnes. Ce que nous avons l'intention de faire au niveau de l'équipe pays du Sénégal, c'est de continuer. Après cette rencontre de Dakar, nous allons continuer une grande campagne de communication pour permettre à ceux qui ont envie de rejoindre les différents réseaux de s'assurer que leur voix est entendue, qui veulent contribuer au débat, leur donner l'opportunité de le faire. Et évidemment, plus on s'approche de la conférence, il faudra à un moment donné faire un arbitrage. Il faudrait à un moment donné identifier les priorités, mais ces décisions et ces arbitrages vont se faire pleinement avec les différentes parties prenantes. Et je crois pour moi c'est le message d'avoir cette consultation inclusive et multi-partenaire, c'est de s'assurer que les décisions qui sont prises généralement par les politiques, les fonctionnaires, tiennent compte et entendent la voix des populations les plus démunies qui sont celles pour lesquelles nous voulons assurer l'accès à de l'eau potable. Donc, c'est peut-être le message que je voudrais laisser. Continuons d'écouter tout le monde, de consulter, priorisons par la même occasion. Je pense que cela nous donnera une conférence au mois de décembre encore plus solide et nous sommes disponibles pour accompagner ce processus. Je vous remercie.
Ça, c'est une bonne conclusion. Non, honnêtement. Et je veux remercier tout le monde, et surtout vous. Everyone's tired out there, so thank you all for having engaged in this. And I saw some more hands, so I think we're going to be able to continue, but we recognize that you have a lot to do. I also want to thank the panel. You've done a really tremendous job, and I really appreciate we didn't have prepared questions for you. But I did want to also just note that I do think we want to kind of pair, if you will, consider kind of Neil's, concern, I guess, maybe even alarm for some of the positive things that we're seeing here, because ultimately there has been structures and opportunities created, and it may be that we need to kind of optimize those, but they're there. We've heard a few of them. We had one yesterday. There's been some offers, and I think there is honestly a sincere effort by the organizers and all of us to make this happen. But at the same time, I think you said creating channels of communication. You talked about facilitating it, and so it's not something that's going to happen unless there's this real, I would say, intentional, thoughtful, deliberate kind of action. So if we're just sort of sitting back and doing as we've done, kind of business as usual, we're not going to be able to make things work the way we all have intent to do. So I think honestly, it's a matter of us kind of trying to think, all of us thinking, okay, let's take another 5 minutes and thinking about how we could get this stakeholder engagement to work. So I think with that, just a huge thanks to all of you. I learned a lot, and we will try to make this work the best we can. So have a great rest of your evening.
So just, excuse me, just sorry, a quick reminder that the Dakar high-level preparatory meeting will start again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. We'll be having roundtable E on water in multilateral processes that will start at 9 o'clock in this auditorium. So wish you a wonderful evening and look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning. Thank you.